Hi, how are you doing? This is AWS By Doing. I'm Madhu Vasudevan from the AWS By Doing team. Welcome to this educational video series, AWS By Doing, wherein you can learn AWS Cloud Computing by following along with an AWS Certified Solutions Architect. We acknowledge and thank the official AWS documentation material which we have used to produce this educational video. Although we will try to keep all resources consumed eligible for the free tier, ensuring that you are not charged or minimizing your charges is your responsibility. To minimize charges, remember to delete all created chargeable resources after each session. This time, we will walk you through a hands-on lab on create an RDS SQL Server DB instance, install Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio Express, connect to your RDS SQL Server database, delete the RDS SQL Server DB instance. Estimated cost for doing this hands-on is no charge as RDS SQL Server DB instance is free tier eligible. The prerequisite AWS skill level required is that of beginner with general understanding of AWS RDS SQL Server concepts. To set up a free tier eligible AWS account and a user with sufficient permissions, check out our video on Create Admin User. To begin, fire up a browser, preferably Google Chrome, and head to aws.amazon.com. Sign in to the AWS Management Console as a user with administrator credentials. In this hands-on, you will create a Microsoft SQL Server database instance, connect to the database, and delete the DB instance. We will do this using Amazon Relational Database Service, Amazon RDS, and everything done in this tutorial is free tier eligible. Enter the RDS console. AWS Cloud resources are housed in highly available data center facilities in different areas of the world. Each region contains multiple distinct locations called availability zones. You have the ability to choose which region to host your Amazon RDS activity in. In the top right corner of the Amazon RDS console, select the region in which you want to create the DB instance. Click on Create Database. You now have options to select your engine. For this hands-on, click the Microsoft SQL Server icon. Select SQL Server Express Edition. Scroll down and check only Enable options eligible for RDS free tier usage. Click on Next. Under Instance Specifications, for license model, select License Included. Amazon RDS supports the 4 Microsoft SQL Server editions: Enterprise, Standard, Web, and Express. When you set up an Amazon RDS DB instance for Microsoft SQL Server, the software license is included. This means that you don't need to purchase SQL Server licenses separately. AWS holds the license for the SQL Server database software. Amazon RDS pricing includes the software license, underlying hardware resources, and Amazon RDS management capabilities. For DB Engine version, select the latest supported MS SQL version from the drop-down. For DB instance class, select db.t2.micro. This equates to 1 GB memory and 1 virtual CPU. Amazon RDS supports 3 types of instance classes: standard, memory optimized, and burstable performance. Standard DB instance classes available are db.m1, db.m3, db.m4, and db.m5. Memory optimized DB instance classes available are db.m2, db.r3, db.r4, db.r5, db.x1, db.x1e, and db.z1d. Burstable performance DB instance classes available are db.t2 and db.t3. Time zone is optional. You can select a time zone if desired. It's not needed for this hands-on. For storage type, you can only select General Purpose SSD, the only free tier eligible option. General Purpose SSD volumes offer cost-effective storage that is ideal for a broad range of workloads. These volumes deliver single-digit millisecond latencies and the ability to burst to 3000 IOPS for extended periods of time. Baseline performance for these volumes is determined by the volume's size. Provisioned IOPS storage is designed to meet the needs of I/O-intensive workloads, particularly database workloads that require low I/O latency and consistent I/O throughput. Amazon RDS also supports magnetic storage for backward compatibility. We recommend that you use General Purpose SSD or provisioned IOPS for any new storage needs. The maximum amount of storage allowed for DB instances on magnetic storage is also much less than that of the other storage types. For allocated storage, select the default of 20 to allocate 20 GB of storage for your database. You can scale up to a maximum of 16 terabytes with Amazon RDS for SQL Server. Enable storage auto-scaling. If your workload is cyclical or unpredictable, you would enable storage auto-scaling to enable RDS to automatically scale up your storage when needed. This option does not apply to this hands-on. With storage auto-scaling enabled, when Amazon RDS detects that you are running out of free database space, it automatically scales up your storage. Amazon RDS starts a storage modification for an auto-scaling enabled DB instance when these factors apply. Free available space is less than 10% of the allocated storage. The low storage condition lasts at least 5 minutes, and at least 6 hours have passed since the last storage modification. The additional storage is in increments of whichever of the following is greater: 5 GB or 10% of currently allocated storage, or storage growth prediction for 7 hours based on the free storage space metrics change in the past hour. The maximum storage threshold is the limit to which the DB instance can be auto-scaled. You can't set the maximum storage threshold for autoscaling enabled instances to a value greater than the maximum allocated storage. Under Settings, for DB Instance Identifier, type a name for the DB instance that is unique for your account in the region you selected. For this hands-on, we will name it My RDS Test. For master username, type a username that you will use to log in to your DB instance. We will use master username in this example. Type a password that contains from 8 to 41 printable ASCII characters. Confirm your password by retyping your password. Click on Next. Under Network and Security, for Virtual Private Cloud VPC, select Default VPC. For Subnet Group, choose the default Subnet Group. For public accessibility, choose Yes. This will allocate an IP address for your database instance so that you can directly connect to the database from your own device. Subnets are segments of a VPC's IP address range that you designate to group your resources based on security and operational needs. A DB subnet group is a collection of subnets, typically private, that you create in a VPC and that you then designate for your DB instances. A DB subnet group allows you to specify a particular VPC when creating DB instances using the CLI or API. If you use the console, you can just choose the VPC and subnets you want to use. Each DB subnet group should have subnets in at least 2 availability zones in a given AWS region. When creating a DB instance in a VPC, you must choose a DB subnet group. Amazon RDS uses that DB subnet group and your preferred availability zone to choose a subnet and an IP address within that subnet to associate with your DB instance. If the primary DB instance of a multi-AZ deployment fails, Amazon RDS can promote the corresponding standby and subsequently create a new standby using an IP address of the subnet in one of the other availability zones. The DB subnet group for a local zone can have only one subnet. When Amazon RDS creates a DB instance in a VPC, it assigns a network interface to your DB instance by using an IP address from your DB subnet group. However, we strongly recommend that you use the DNS name to connect to your DB instance because the underlying IP address changes during failover. For each DB instance that you run in a VPC, make sure to reserve at least one address in each subnet in the DB subnet group for use by Amazon RDS for recovery actions. For VPC security groups, select Create New VPC Security Group. This will create a security group that will allow connection from the IP address of the device that you are currently using to connect to the database created. Under Database Options, for port, leave the default value of 1433. For DB parameter group, also leave the default value. A DB parameter group acts as a container for engine configuration values that are applied to one or more DB instances. You manage your DB engine configuration by associating your DB instances with parameter groups. Amazon RDS defines parameter groups with default settings that apply to newly created DB instances. You can define your own parameter groups with customized settings. Then you can modify your DB instances to use your own parameter groups. If you create a DB instance without specifying a DB parameter group, the DB instance uses a default DB parameter group. Each default DB parameter group contains database engine defaults and Amazon RDS system defaults based on the engine, compute class, and allocated storage of the instance. You can't modify the parameter settings of a default parameter group. For option group, leave the default value. Amazon RDS uses option groups to enable and configure additional features. Some DB engines offer additional features that make it easier to manage data and databases and to provide additional security for your database. Amazon RDS uses option groups to enable and configure these features. An option group can specify features called options that are available for a particular Amazon RDS DB instance. Options can have settings that specify how the option works. When you associate a DB instance with an option group, the specified options and option settings are enabled for that DB instance. Amazon RDS provides an empty default option group for each new DB instance. You cannot modify this default option group, but any new option group that you create derives its settings from the default option group. To apply an option to a DB instance, you must do the following. Create a new option group, or copy or modify an existing option group, add one or more options to the option group, associate the option group with the DB instance. Under Microsoft SQL Server Windows Authentication, for directory, leave this as none. Amazon RDS supports Windows authentication for SQL Server in all AWS regions except the Middle East, Bahrain. You can use Microsoft Windows Authentication to authenticate users when they connect to your Amazon RDS for Microsoft SQL Server DB instance. The DB instance works with AWS Directory Service for Microsoft Active Directory, also called AWS Managed Microsoft AD, to enable Windows authentication. When users authenticate with a SQL Server DB instance joined to the trusting domain, authentication requests are forwarded to the domain directory that you create with AWS Directory Service. Amazon RDS uses mixed mode for Windows authentication. This approach means that the master user, that is the name and password used to create your SQL Server DB instance, uses SQL authentication. Because the master user account is a privileged credential, you should restrict access to this account. The encryption option is not available in the free tier, but Amazon RDS supports using transparent data encryption, that is TDE, to encrypt stored data on your DB instances running Microsoft SQL Server. TDE automatically encrypts data before it is written to storage and automatically decrypts data when the data is read from storage. To enable transparent data encryption for an RDS SQL Server DB instance, specify the TDE option in an RDS option group that is associated with that DB instance. Transparent data encryption for SQL Server provides encryption key management by using a two-tier key architecture. A certificate, which is generated from the database master key, is used to protect the data encryption keys. The database encryption key performs the actual encryption and decryption of the data on the user database. Under backup, for backup retention period, you can choose the number of days to retain the backup you take. For this tutorial, set this value to 1 day. For backup window, use the default of no preference. Amazon RDS creates and saves automated backups of your DB instance during the backup window of your DB instance. RDS creates a storage volume snapshot of your DB instance, backing up the entire DB instance and not just individual databases. RDS saves the automated backups of your DB instance according to the backup retention period that you specify. If necessary, you can recover your database to any point in time during the backup retention period. Automated backups occur daily during the preferred backup window. If the backup requires more time than the allotted backup window time, the backup continues after the window ends until it finishes. The backup window can't overlap with the weekly maintenance window for the DB instance. During the automated backup window, storage I/O might be suspended briefly while the backup process initializes, typically under a few seconds. You might experience elevated latencies for a few minutes even during backups for multi-AZ deployments. Under monitoring, for enhanced monitoring, use the default of Enable Enhanced Monitoring. Enabling enhanced monitoring will give you metrics in real time for the operating system, the OS, that your DB instance runs on. By default, enhanced monitoring metrics are stored for 30 days in the CloudWatch logs, which are different from typical CloudWatch metrics. To modify the amount of time the metrics are stored in the CloudWatch logs, change the retention for the RDS OS metrics log group in the CloudWatch console. Because enhanced monitoring metrics are stored in the CloudWatch logs instead of in CloudWatch metrics, the cost of enhanced monitoring depends on several factors, but you are only charged for enhanced monitoring that exceeds the free tier provided by Amazon CloudWatch logs. Under Performance Insights, select Disable Performance Insights for this hands-on. Amazon RDS Performance Insights is a database performance tuning and monitoring feature that helps you quickly assess the load on your database and determine when and where to take action. Performance Insights allows non-experts to detect performance problems with an easy-to-understand dashboard that visualizes database load. Under Maintenance, Auto Miner Version Upgrade, select Enable Auto Miner Version Upgrade to receive automatic updates when they become available. Amazon RDS provides newer versions of each supported database engine so you can keep your DB instance up to date. Newer versions can include bug fixes, security enhancements, and other improvements for the database engine. When Amazon RDS supports a new version of a database engine, you can choose how and when to upgrade your database DB instances. There are two kinds of upgrades: major version upgrades and minor version upgrades. In general, a major engine version upgrade can introduce changes that are not compatible with existing applications. In contrast, a minor version upgrade includes only changes that are backward compatible with existing applications. A minor engine version is an update to a DB engine version within a major engine version. For example, a major engine version might be 9.6, with the minor engine version being 9.6.11 and 9.6.12 within it. If you want Amazon RDS to upgrade the DB engine version of a database automatically, you can enable Auto Miner Version Upgrades for the database. When Amazon RDS designates a minor engine version as the preferred minor engine version, each database that meets two conditions is upgraded to the minor engine version automatically. 1. The database is running a minor version of the DB engine that is lower than the preferred minor engine version. And 2. The database has Auto Miner Version Upgrade enabled, like we just did. For maintenance window, leave it at no preference. Every DB instance has a weekly maintenance window during which any system changes are applied. You can think of the maintenance window as an opportunity to control when modifications and software patching occur in the event either are requested or required. If a maintenance event is scheduled for a given week, it is initiated during the 30-minute maintenance window you identify. Most maintenance events also complete during the 30-minute maintenance window, although larger maintenance events may take more than 30 minutes to complete. Finally, under Deletion Protection, clear Enable Deletion Protection for this hands-on. When this option is enabled, you are prevented from accidentally deleting the database. Click on Create Database. Your DB instance is now being created. Click View Your DB Instances. Depending on the DB instance class and storage allocated, it could take several minutes for the new DB instance to become available. The new DB instance appears in the list of DB instances on the RDS console. The DB instance will have a status of creating until the DB instance is created and ready for use. When the state changes to available, you can connect to a database on the DB instance. Feel free to move on to the next step as you wait for the DB instance to become available. Once the database instance creation is complete and the status changes to available, you can connect to a database on the DB instance using any standard SQL client. In this step, we will download Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio Express, a popular client for SQL Server. So go to the Microsoft Download Center, Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio Express page. And click on Download. Select the appropriate file name and click on Next. After the download finishes, run the downloaded executable. The MS Management Studio Express installer might search, download, and install .NET Framework 3.5 components as shown below, in which case you might need to run the same installer again. When the SQL Server Installation Center comes up, click on New Installation . Accept the license terms and click on Next. Select the desired features and click on Next. Finally, you will see a successfully installed screen. Once you have completed your download and installed the program, open the program. The Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio opens up. In a browser window, open the RDS console . Click on Databases . Click on the database you just created, and it is available. Copy the endpoint to the clipboard buffer . In the Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio, copy the endpoint copied from the clipboard to the server name. Select server type as database engine. Log in with the username that you created. In our case, it was master username. Key in the password. and click on Connect. You have connected to the RDS SQL Server instance successfully. You are now connected to the database. In the SQL Server Management Studio, you will see various schema objects available in the database. Now you can start creating databases, tables, insert data, run queries. Here's a sample of the commands you can try out. And hopefully you get successful results like I just have. When done, you could disconnect and exit from the Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. Now it is cleanup time. You should delete the DB instance, and you can easily delete the Microsoft SQL Server DB instance from the Amazon RDS console. It is a best practice to delete instances that you are no longer using so that you don't keep getting charged for them. Go back to your Amazon RDS console . Select Databases. Choose the instance that you want to delete. You could explore around, click on the different tabs. And when done, click on Actions and click on Delete. You are asked to create a final snapshot. For our example, do not create a final snapshot. Acknowledge that you want to delete the instance. Type delete me. And click on delete. Deleting your DB instance may take a few minutes. Congratulations! You have created, connected to, and finally deleted a Microsoft SQL Server database instance with Amazon RDS. Amazon RDS makes it easy to set up, operate, and scale a relational database in the cloud. It provides cost-efficient and resizable capacity while managing time-consuming database administration tasks, freeing you to focus on your applications and business. Thanks for watching. Please give a thumbs up to this video to encourage us. Share this video with your friends and colleagues, and subscribe to this channel AWS By Doing, and we will update you regularly with our latest and greatest offerings. Write in a comment of what you liked and how we can improve. Happy cloud computing, and we will see you again in the next episode of AWS By Doing.